Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I decided to do 5 important rulings to know in today's metagame. A couple things have been popping up here and there in the past couple of weeks, I could say, and it's been very interesting. And I don't know if I talked about that much on the channel, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm a fan of rulings and rules. Like, I will that as eat something like dinner and just scroll through my phone on Judges Lounge on Facebook. I'm all for that. I'm very passionate about that. So yeah, I just figured why not cover a couple things that really were a hot topic, you could say, in the last couple of weeks, like I said, and sort of just be make a video and be a place for you to have all of the info together, because and I want to stress this right now, these are not my rulings. I didn't come up with this. I just saw a lot of talk about it, and huge shout out to Judges Lounge on Facebook for existing, and huge shout out to people there for existing and actually taking the time out of their day to give answers and to give rulings. And this is my place to go to when I'm unsure of anything, and I would highly advise you to do that as well. So this video is really meant for you to be just a place where you can come to for most recent rulings, and I just want to cover everything that has been answered on the Judges Lounge and just a couple things that came up. So yeah, this was a long intro. I just really wanted to stress that out. Please let me know down in the comments if you found these rulings interesting, if you have any other ideas or questions or things you might want answered, or anything basically. I would just love for you to interact with me. Also, sub to the channel. As always, I like to encourage you to do that because a lot of you are still not, and I would really love for you to be part of this community. Alright, so I picked 5, and I purposely picked the ones that were the most talked about. With Tyrion gaining popularity, I think it's important to mention a couple things. So, the way Tyrion King Regulus is worded is going to help us understand how it works with an interaction of him and Didi Crow. So, if you're the turn player and you have Tyrion King Regulus in your hand and you activate its effect targeting a Tyrion or a machine in your graveyard, and your opponent would chain Didi Crow thinking that the Tyrion King Regulus won't go through, what happens is your opponent will be wrong, because Tyrion King Regulus is worded with an "and if you do" clause. So, special summon this card, and if you do, equip the monster from the graveyard. And when cards are worded that way, it just means that if another card would interact with the aforementioned card in a way to prevent it from fully resolving, the aforementioned card, being Tyrion King Regulus, would attempt to resolve as much as possible. So, in this scenario, Tyrion King Regulus would still be special summoned, and essentially the Didi Crow was kind of just a waste. So, what I would advise you to do would be to use Didi Crow preemptively. So if you happen to have it, and in this scenario, how I put it, I only have the one Lily in the graveyard. So if my opponent uses Didi Crow before I activate Tyrion King Regulus, I cannot even activate it. There is no Tyrion, no machine in the graveyard, so I cannot even attempt to summon him, and that would be the correct thing to do in this scenario. The next ruling is going to be about Tyrion King Regulus as well, and it has something to do with his second effect. I figured it's only fitting to cover both of them, since this also applies to how Skill Drain and Infinite Impermanence or Effect Veiler, something that targets a card, works when negating a monster. So first of all, I have a couple things on my channel on the playlist of things to be mindful of when it comes to very specific things like the damage step, impermanence, skill drain. A lot of stuff has already been covered, but it's quite a while back, so if you're interested in that, make sure to check that playlist out. But when it comes to this effect, we can sort of refresh our memories again. So how does that work? If there is Tyrion King Regulus on the field attempting to negate a card that has been activated by the opponent, so if Skill Drain is on the field and Tyrion King Regulus attempts to activate the effect to negate by sending himself to the graveyard as cost, what will happen is the effect will not go through and Tyrion King Regulus will resolve successfully, because Skill Drain says that the card needs to be face up on the field in order to have its effects negated. But what happens when you have something like Veiler or Impermanence that targets a card? The card will get negated, and that is why King Regulus If, for example, the scenario would be Impermanence or Valor has already resolved and King Regulus was successfully negated and later on tries to activate the effect and also going to the graveyard as cost again, the difference here is, and why its effect would get negated, is because a card resolves where it activates. And since it was negated on the field, it resolves on the field, it's activated on the field, it's also going to get negated there because the target of Impermanence, Valor, whatever, has already been successfully negated. And later on, it tried to use its effect. So when you have a card that's sort of like generally covers the field, something like Skill Drain, and just said that cards needs to be face up, sure, it needs to be face up, it's not face up anymore, that's the end of the discussion. But when you have something that resolves where it activates, and it resolves negated because it has previously been negated, it doesn't matter that it went to the graveyard. The next one is going to be about what happens if there is 2 activations of Branded in Red and 2 Branded Lost on the field. This is a scenario I'm sure a lot of you keep encountering if you're playing Despia mirror matches. The only important thing in this scenario would be who the first one to activate that Branded in Red is, because only the Chainlink one Branded in Red is going to be able to actually resolve the effect that happened as a consequence of that Branded in Red on resolution. So with the replay showcasing everything and making it make more sense as opposed to me just explaining it to you, will be if I'm the turn player and my opponent activates their set Branded in Red and I chain mine because I want to get my effects going, whatever it may be, I resolve it, I make Guardian Chimera, they make their own Guardian Chimera, and since the chain resolves backwards, the last thing that happened, the last thing that actually resolves is the summon of their Guardian Chimera because they were Chainlink 1. And because the effect says when a monster is fusion summoned that way, it essentially just states that only the Chainlink 1 is able to go through. So in this scenario, only my opponent will get the effect of everything that they want to activate. And that's very, very, very important to keep in mind. Okay, then we have 2 a bit more complicated ones for me to explain to you because I truly just want to use the correct terms and make sense and not waste 20 minutes doing so. So, bear with me. Chimera versus Book of Moon has been a huge topic of discussion. I've been avidly, just refreshing Judges Lounge and looking at everything that has to do with Chimera and Book of Moon. And why that's important is because people were unsure as to when does Chimera actually check for its materials, whether it's on activation or on resolution. So if we have a chain of just Chimera being summoned, and then on the summon there's effects activating, and there's also Book of Moon trying to set the Guardian Chimera, because the important part of Chimera's text is that you can draw cards equal to the number of cards used from your hand and destroy cards your opponent controls equal to the amount of cards used from the field. So, firstly, Chimera needs to be legal to activate. So that's why people say, and that is why the ruling has been sort of given as to what the official ruling probably is that Book of Moon does not interfere with Chimera. And the reason is because, like I said, the activation needs to be legal. So Chimera needs to check on activation. And since Chimera has already checked because it needs to be able to destroy the equal amount of cards on the opponent's field, that's why pretty much everything has been said and done. Chimera has already checked. So if it gets Book of Moon later on, it doesn't really matter because it has already determined how many cards it is going to destroy. As opposed to if Chimera did check on resolution, of course it being face down, it cannot check anything, it cannot destroy anything. And a pretty similar thing would be with Mech Knight, Blue Sky. It needs to be face up because it does check how many cards are in its column, and this may be sort of we may be steering in a wrong direction, so I won't spend too much time on it. But the important thing about this entire convolution of rulings is that Chimera does indeed check on activation because it needs to make sure that the activation is actually legal. So it will destroy the cards that it checked previously about its number, the number of materials, so it doesn't really matter that it was flipped face down by Book of Moon. All right, and then we have the last one, and this is sort of also one I'm going to struggle a bit with to explain, but let's go. Bear with me again. So, what happens if a card is activated that makes a monster change control, but the monster can trigger its effect on the next possible chain? So, if the scenario is me activating Triple Tactics talent, and in this case, you can see in the replay, I like played Brand Diffusion. My Brand Diffusion was negated by Ash, so I can actually legally activate talents. So if I activate talents and I attempt to take my opponent's monster, and they chain branded in red. So they summon Chimera, but then the chain resolves, I take their Chimera, and then the question poses itself, which one of us can activate Chimera? And how this has been explained is that the opponent can use Guardian Chimera because they were the one that summoned Guardian Chimera, and because it triggers due to its summon, it responds to its own summon, and it has not been previously on the field. And there is a different ruling which also sort of got mixed into this entire debate, because another scenario is if I have Natasha in the graveyard and I banish Cyber Angel Benton, for example, to special summon it to take control of my opponent's Chengying. This has actually been posted on the official database, and this is why some parallels have been drawn between these two scenarios, but they are completely different, as has been explained on the Judges Lounge. Basically, if I take control and then Chengying can activate on the next available chain, which one of us can activate it? And the answer is me, the one who took control of it. And if you look at the previous scenario, this is not what happened. It wasn't me that was able to activate Guardian Chimera. And the difference is that Chengying has already been face up on the field, and it responded to another card changing position, basically just being moved somewhere else, doing something. It responded to another card as opposed to it being summoned and responding to itself. And this is how it has been explained. The difference is what does the card react to and whether or not it has already been face up on the field. And there are numerous examples from the past years that speak for that, and you can search for all of that if you want, but these are two recent ones that I really wanted to bring to light because I think it's very important with the cards being played in today's metagame. So that would pretty much be it for the rulings. Hopefully this was fun and entertaining, most importantly informative to watch. I love bringing that kind of content to you, and I truly want to know your opinion. If that's something you're interested in, I would legit passionately bring you more, so please let me know. And yeah, as always, if you like the video, like it, make sure to check out all of the social media, sub to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.